Hi, and welcome to the first ever episode of the Volunteer Academy's Open Talk, a frank and open conversation with members of our Middlesbrough Voluntary and Community Sector organisations. This month, we're chatting about men's mental health, with the aim to raise awareness and promote open conversations between men. Over the next month, we'll be sharing a selection of conversations held between Chris and Neil from the Volunteer Academy and our special guest, Matthew Williams from Knockout Depression and Richie Andrew from Everyman Can. These two non-profit organisations do tireless work to raise awareness for men's mental health, promote positive messages, and give practical advice to those who need it. So welcome and enjoy. So to start off, I mean, what would be great was just a little whip around the table, who we are. Don't have to look at camera or anything like that. Just a chat, who we are, what your kick does, what our roles are as such. Okay. We'll go around the table like that. And then, I suppose, just maybe chat about the importance.
Yeah.
Why we're here today. Yeah. Why it's really important. And again, feel free to share stories or what you do as a business. That's absolutely fine. Which one? I always got my left. Do you want to start us off, mate?
Yeah. I'm Richie Andrew. I'm a Stockton-born lad, basically, originally. My greatest motivation is basically seeing other people reach beyond their potential, basically. So that's who I am. I'm someone who's motivated by seeing people realise and see that light coming up on their face that says, actually, I didn't think I could do this, and I'm doing it. So I'm highly motivated by people's lived experience. I'm very passionate about men's health, particularly, holistically, not just mental health, but men's health full stop, and the whole subculture of men. I've worked in public health for 21 years, nearly 22 years in health improvement. And back in 2014, we set up an insight report for men's health in Middlesbrough. And what emerged out of that was a programme called Everyman Can, which was looked at, had a men's health plan. One of the things it looked at was telling the stories of men. With some changes that came in to public health and a reshuffle, as things always do, men's health was at risk. So with Matthew and others to my left here, we did took part in an evaluation study to look at what the value was of Everyman Can, because it was at risk. And so what that produced was, through the Fuse network in North East, was an evaluation study that made it very clear that the work we were doing was highly valuable, closely linked to the evidence base, and we needed to do it on a bigger scale. And so rather than the struggle to try and get that done in public health, because there wasn't the capacity there anymore, I decided to set my own kick, which is called Everyman Can. And basically its overarching aim is to improve the health and empower men to have better, healthier relationships, better quality choice in their life for their health, and that's the aim is for that across Tees Valley initially, and we'll go from there.
Right, so I'm Matthew Williams, and I set up Knockout Depression 3.5 years ago now, and we use boxing to help people to better understand mental health and to improve their mental health. I think, like a lot of people who work in this field, and particularly people who set up their own ventures, very much initially driven by my own lived experience and wanting to use that to help other people. I think you have that. You don't want anyone to go through what you did and feel how you felt. And I think it's really important that there are. We're all different, so having a variety of options available to people who are struggling to find what works for them, I think is really important. And that's why I've always been keen, linking with other community organisations. And, it's about knowing what's out there and helping people find what works best for them. And so I've, obviously come across both Richie, Neil through my work, and we've done some things together, and it's again a great example of men community, men working together, supporting each other, and every day really that's what drives me on and motivates and inspires me. And ultimately when someone tells you about something that they've done or achieved in their life that they don't think they'd have done if they hadn't taken that step to engage with what you're doing, is it's just very, very rewarding. So that's me.
Thanks, mate.
Well, a bit of me anyway.
Yeah, so I think it's a really important point to make. It's actually nice to show 4 men sat around a table chatting, because we work together all the time. But highlighting that is really important, because we take it for granted. We always say that men don't talk, and we probably don't. So it's actually really nice that you highlighted that. Actually, so, go on.
I'm Neil Craig, and I'm a volunteering development officer officer for MVDA, working on the Volunteering Academy. And my journey to get to this position, I spent 40 years in the steelworks, and then at the end of my career in the steelworks, it was when everything was shutting down on Teesside. And I've seen a lot of lads change and how it affected a lot of people who were losing their self-worth, I suppose, and their golden standard that they were given to live to. And I've seen it affect lads that were perhaps, when I started, my mentors and people I'd looked up to. So I couldn't believe that people like that would react in that way. So when I retired, I decided I needed something, which was volunteering. And I volunteered with Teesside Samaritans, and I became the director of Teesside Samaritans, and I got more involved in it, and I worked in the prisons and worked with the lads in the local prisons, Home House, Kirkleverton, and taught them lads to offer emotional support to their fellow inmates and do a Samaritan's role within the prison, which was really rewarding. And to see that these lads take on this role as an emotional support for the colleagues was so, and the lads got so much from it, as I've got so much from it. And then from that, I volunteer with SAFA, and I do transition work with SAFA. So I pick a lad up 6 months from leaving the forces and stay with him for the next year, 2 years into civilian life, because it's from some Samaritan's work. I've seen how difficult lads find that transition, and we end up with lads on the streets and things like that, and we just need that little bit of support. And I get a lot from that now. And then from that, I'll be working with MVDA, and I can see the benefits of volunteering for men's mental health and what men can get from that. From your own story, I've got so much from it. So trying to get people into volunteering and letting them see the awareness of how powerful that is, the volunteering. Obviously, you'll be able to edit that.
Yeah, anywhere you want, mate. I might leave it in. Up and talk, absolutely. Thanks, mate. That's great. So I'm Chris Layfield. For the past 3 years now, I work with MVDA and the Volunteering Academy, and I run my own kick alongside that as well. And I've done this past 3 years after leaving a really intense, high-pressure events and wedding industry, which I ran a company for 10 years, which really took its toll. It was really, really long hours. It was all over the country. It was not seeing my children in the summer. And as I started that, I went through a really, really bad breakup. And I went through a separation from my ex-wife. And as I left that, my mental health was in an absolute state. I was at rock bottom, felt the guilt of leaving a marriage, whether it was for the right reasons or wrong reasons, just the guilt of leaving was absolutely awful. And I had the worst 6 months of being at my lowest point possible and thinking about taking my own life quite often. So I didn't really know how to come out of a really dark place. I can't even remember a lot of it now. But the one thing I remember was I started doing my sort of getting a love for art again. And as I did that more and more, shared that more and more publicly, that started to become an outlet for me. It started to become a really positive thing for me to share, to me to use with my own children. I started working and linking back in with schools I used to work with back in my youth work days, and running art workshops. And I am a very, very sort of big believer that at that point art saved my life.
Yeah.
Massively. And as the more and more I did it, I became more and more passionate about wanting to work with people, wanting to show people the benefits and the process of art and how that has a benefit on our mental well-being as well as our physical well-being. And that became my one and only passion, and put all my worth into working with people again. Because I realised that's actually what I was based, that's who I am. Whether that was through art, whether it's through MVDA and volunteering, because I just saw so much in it. And it gave me the passion to not live again, it sounds dramatic, but live again, to go forward and really give myself some ownership to life again, which I've missed for so long.
Can I because something you said just really stood out to me when you said about obviously how passionate you are about art, and that's very clear in, you know, obviously I've seen bits about what you do, and it's fantastic. I mean, your Instagram page is so bright and colourful, and seeing everyone engaging, it's fantastic. But that thing about you being so passionate about what you do, I think it's one of the things that I've learned is, you know, I think like we all have here, ultimately we've come to a point where we've had to find something that gives us that, I don't know, brings us back to ourselves, engages with life again, however you want to term it. And I was still like, everything I'm doing now, so there's various different things I do, and I couldn't plan for any of them. The things that I couldn't do, I had no idea I could even do a few years ago. And it comes through following your passion. And I think that's one thing, when you get to that lowest point that you described, and I've been there, and it just strips away everything. And that rebuilding yourself again, it does force you to ask, who am I? What drives me? What gets me up in the morning? What am I passionate about? And that is the balance in your life, your kids, your family, it brings everything up. And then, so to be able to then, it's almost in hindsight, certainly for me, like I said, I couldn't have planned any of it. You look back and you think, I've done this. And it's like, and the big thing for me out of all that is it's escaping from the, I should do this, and breaking away from living in the way that you should live. And we try to maintain that. And when you said about the guilt, your marriage ending, I mean, again, I've been there, and suddenly life isn't as it should be anymore. So you've got to and the costs to you, where it can take you, where it isn't. So it's like, right, I've got to find what works for me. And that comes with like, and I always say to people now, it's like, you're in a place where you don't see a solution, you don't see a way out. And one of the big things I've learned is that I could never have imagined what that way out would be. And it's part of it is having faith that there is something and that's why I say again, having lots of different opportunities. People, that doesn't work for you. It doesn't mean that's it. There's something out there. And again, seeing different ways, volunteering, creativity. I know you do the kind of stuff with Fire and Ice and all. There's different things out there, and there is something that will work for you. And again, getting away from that idea, I should this, I should that, and and someone I worked with went down a holistic therapy route, having been in the police, and say, like it wasn't who he should have been, but he loved it. So he went, and seeing people really become themselves and living their passion, it's so rewarding. And I think we're probably decent examples of that.
Especially with the people on this table, it's finding your passion. And I can remember Matthew doing a talk for Samaritan, must be 10 years ago. And it was probably one of the first times you'd done something like that, I believe. You just started out doing it, and Matthew's passion came through straight away. And I don't have to have the same passion for art as these two gentlemen have, or boxing and things like that. I probably have more passion for boxing, if I'm honest. But it's just that passion, and seeing through that passion how you can help support yourself and help yourself. And I think people sign up for that. They'll think, well, that's me getting through this. It doesn't have to be anything that we're all interested in, but they can follow it the same way. I think that's important. We're all different. We're all made up different, and we all get our supporting mechanisms in different areas. I think.
I'm interested. I mean, I'm particularly interested in this idea of like people finding what works for them. Looking back at my T-shirt, you'll see the tagline for Everyman Can says, "Find what works for you," and it's something that's like, because I've heard it 100,000 times probably, and it's from other people, because it's like that's what the story is all about. Yet, what society, what our system tells us, is to be a good pill taker and be like, attend therapies basically. Now these things have value, and I whenever I talk about this, I've got to remind people that basically they have a value for them, but certainly not for the number of people that depend on them and for the amount of time they do. Therapy for me was a huge factor in terms of like getting me forward from. Again, I'm not going to, like, I think we're all coming from similar backgrounds. I mean, like divorce, I've got, kid and so on as well. But it's just like, I think when you weather things, certainly in the medium long term, when you find recovery or whatever that looks like, it has to look like something that's individual for you. It has to be purposeful. It has to be something that that you develop a passion about. And usually it has to have something which has the ability to grow and develop within it and become more and more skilled at whatever it is you're doing. So you can constantly, see that progression as well. So this, I mean, those things I've referred to there, like, when we talk about mental health, like really the conversation when you get down much further down the line doesn't really come down to, well, these are the symptoms and this is how the tablet helped me. Usually what the people start talking about is, like you did there, about actually I realized what I was doing wasn't making me happy. Well, and then I started doing something else that was actually quite passionate about. Well, what a bloody surprise. It's like, Oh, actually, I wasn't. Something was driving me down, but it took me to actually look in the mirror and turn that mirror onto myself and have a look at it. And then the other thing is trying out new things. So that very action of, like you said there, it's not obvious what you're going to find.
Yeah.
But until you find it and you start doing artwork or whatever, about your favourite boxes and so on, getting the world reflecting back to you that this is a value, it's something you're good at and valuable at. It's like brilliant.
Yeah.